So this paper slide video is on the human impact on the biosphere. Humans participate in a lot of activities which have a direct impact on our environment. First, we're going to talk about human population. So how is human population growth measured? First, you can measure human population growth exponentially, and this is going to have a J shape, or we call it J curve. This happens rapidly and occurs in the presence of unlimited resources. So if you take a look at the graph, you should be able to resemble the line that looks in the shape of a J. The growth rate of the population is going to accelerate very quickly. So the population size is going to increase with time. Remember, this only occurs when there's unlimited amount of resources. Then you have logistic growth, which is going to resemble an S shape or S curve. It starts off exponentially, so the rate accelerates, and then eventually the population begins to slow or stop, and this is due to the carrying capacity. So that perforated or dotted line is the carrying capacity, and it's going to allow the environment to know when the maximum amount of resources can be supplied for that population. So growth rate is going to be equivalent to the amount of births minus the deaths. So what? Why do we care? Population has a direct impact on the amount of resources available per environment. Global warming, what is it? It's a gradual increase in the overall temperature of the Earth's atmosphere. This causes what? Greenhouse effect, which traps gases like carbon dioxide from the burning of fossil fuels in excessive amounts, and this happens in the atmosphere. Note that the U.S. is responsible for about 20% of global greenhouse gases emitted. And the effects include the Earth's temperature having been risen 1 degree in the last century. And a direct result of that is during the past 100 years, global sea levels have risen 4 to 8 inches. Damaging storms, droughts, etc. have caused an increase in economic and health problems. Some examples you may remember are Hurricanes Katrina and Sandy, and it also creates breeding grounds for malaria-carrying mosquitoes. Acid rain and fossil fuels. So it's the byproducts of burning fossil fuels, mainly sulfur dioxide and nitrogen oxides that are released into the air. They then react with water and oxygen and other chemicals to form acidic pollutants. So the effects of this are respiratory diseases like asthma and bronchitis. It harms forests by dissolving the nutrients they need for growth. It alters pH levels of lakes and streams. Ultimately, that's going to kill the wildlife that lives in those lakes and streams. It's going to cause paint and stone statues damage, so like the Statue of Liberty. Habitat alteration, there are 3 main focuses that we're going to talk about, and that's urbanization, deforestation, and overgrazing. So urbanization is the growth of cities. Effects include loss of habitat, destruction of natural areas, water pollution, increased garbage, heat islands, increased runoff and flooding, air pollution. So some solutions that can counteract this include expanding upward instead of outward, conserve natural habitats, energy and resource conservation, providing green space, and then remember to plan first and then build later. Deforestation is the removal of trees. Effects include loss of biodiversity, loss of habitat, desertification, soil erosion, sediment pollution, and climate change. And solutions include reforestation, selective cutting, tree farms, preservation, and recycling. Then overgrazing occurs when plants are expected intense grazing by livestock for prolonged periods of time. So you're thinking about organisms like cows that eat grass. Effects include desertification, erosion, sediment pollution, poor body condition in livestock, decreased soil fertility, and some solutions include having less livestock, rotational grazing, and then choose grass that grows at intervals so that as certain grass is being consumed, the other grass can have the time to grow. Then you have invasive species, which are non-native to an ecosystem. They compete with native species for food and for space. It reproduces rapidly because it does not have a natural predator and has flexible living conditions. Examples include kudzu and beach vitex, which can be found primarily in southeastern the United States. Then you have Asian tiger mosquitoes, the black rat, and the snakehead fish. Overharvesting is the act of removing more than the sustainable amount of a resource. The WWF, or the World Wildlife Foundation, estimates that in 50 years another planet will need to be in existence to sustain the world's population if we're going to keep using the resources the way that humans do. Types of overharvesting include overfishing, abusing oil, deforestation, exploitation of animals, and this can be as simple as hunting an animal for its fur, or if you think about the elephants, hunting the elephants for their tusk. Fertilizer, animal waste, algal blooms, which ultimately we're going to be talking about eutrophication. And when you have nutrient pollution from fertilizer, animal waste, this is going to lead to eutrophication. Causes include urban stormwater runoff, runoff that carries excess fertilizer, release of sewage, and effects are going to be excessive plant growth and decay, reduction of water quality, results in algal blooms. And remember, if you have algal blooms, you're going to have a strong odor to go with them. Alters dissolved oxygen levels, and then it's also going to alter the turbidity of water, which is the clarity of water. Runoff. Stormwater runoff occurs after rainfall is unable to penetrate concrete surfaces, such as roads, and they're unable to percolate into the ground. So what? It collects different types of pollution before it reaches a body of water. Surface runoff is precipitation runoff over landscape, and effects include flooding and water pollution. Chlorofluorocarbons, known as CFCs. So they're a group of man-made compounds containing chlorine, fluorine, and carbon. They were originally used in refrigeration in the early 1900s or mid-1900s, and they're also formerly found as blowing agents for AC units. So the primary issue with CFCs are they break down the ozone layer, which means it increases the amount of UV radiation that's going to come into the earth. Biomagnification. So remember, bio means life, and magnification is just going to mean enhancing something. Also known as bioamplification or biological magnification. So it happens two ways. You have bioaccumulation, which is the increase in the concentration of a substance in certain tissues of organisms' bodies due to absorption from food and the environment. Then you have bioconcentration, which occurs when uptake from the water is greater than exertion. So basically, the food and water that organisms consume is contaminated, and this occurs across trophic levels. So once the plants uptake water, for example, that may have been contaminated, and then you have consumers that will eat that plant or eat the primary, secondary consumer. So that process of contamination is just passed along the way. So now you know ways that humans impact the biosphere.